morning everyone, welcome back to the vlog. Well, actually it's afternoon, late afternoon, and so this is probably the sort of first proper trip out in the camper van this year. We've had a really wet, sort of groggy winter, and quite often we're out traveling in the van, maybe even February time, but it's been so wet. And then just at the end of May, we've got end of March, we've got this beautiful sort of few days of sunshine up here in Scotland, so really want to make the most of it. And there's always a few jobs to do when you're getting the camper van sorted, like any old car really. Change the oil, check the plugs, realign the brakes, and just see how everything fares after being sort of in the garage for a few months. But it's really nice to be back out driving and seeing some sunshine. So I don't think I'm going to get much photography done today, unfortunately, not with this blue sky, and looks really hazy out there. Maybe later on this evening perhaps, if we get a little bit of cloud cover. But what I did want to do this episode is talk about filters and why I've made an unexpected change with the filters that I use. Now I would say that I'm quite loyal to the brands that I use. I don't know why, it's just one of those things that I've always done, and I've photographed on Nikon cameras for a good number of years because I've always found that I've been able to achieve what I've needed to. I like the menu layout, I like the camera build, and I've never had any problems with Nikon. But I do think that there comes a point where perhaps if you are using a product that perhaps no longer does what you need it to, or fails and lets you down, then that's a good time to start looking around for something that's going to make the job easier. Now, I've been using Breakthrough filters for a good number of years, and I first found them when I was looking for a filter that basically gave no colour cast to the images and was nice and thin, so that when you're on the widest focal lengths, we got very minimal vignetting caused by the actual filter. And I have to say, I've been really impressed with these filters for a long time. But if you watched my last episode of the video, you'll know, and this has happened quite a few times, where I get the filter stuck on the end of the lens and I just can't get it off. And at first, you kind of cope with it, and but over time, after suffering for a little while, you realise that it's time to make a change. Now, I did go back to the Breakthrough filters to see they were talking about producing their own magnetic version of the filters, but they still haven't done it yet. So I decided that it was time perhaps to shop around. So you can see these filters are incredibly narrow, which is really helpful, but not when it comes to getting them on and off your lens. What happens is you screw them on, doesn't matter how loose they are, over time they work their way getting tighter, and the only thing you've got is this red ring to be able to somehow get the filters off, and it's incredibly difficult. Now, some of you did put some suggestions down on the last episode of the vlog, which were great, but of course it doesn't help when you're out in the field, so it's time to look for an alternative. So some of you might be asking, do you even really need filters these days with the current processing software and the cameras? Well, it totally depends on you. But for me personally, I like to be able to take an image and take it back and do as little amount of processing on that image as possible. So by using filters, it helps me capture the image that I want there while I'm out in the field. So a while ago I'd been watching a YouTube video by Nick Page, who was talking about how he had just changed his filter system, and he'd been using case magnetic filters but was having problems with them sort of staying, and after a while the magnet was wearing off and some of the filters were not as connecting as well as he'd like, and he'd switched over to a company called Maven Filters. So it got me leading down a road of researching to find out who this company were. So I did a bit of research on Maven Filters, and it turns out that it's owned by this chap called Michael Andrew, who is a photographer himself. He teaches photography and has his own YouTube channel, and he was someone that got so fed up with the color cast that the filters he'd been using had been causing, and the loss in quality of the images. He decided that he was going to develop his own filter system. Now, there were a couple of things that really stood out to me reading his story. One was that he was obviously a photographer himself that was trying to get over a problem, and he had that experience of using different filter systems and got to that stage where he decided that there wasn't anything suitable and he was going to develop his own system. Now, the first thing that Michael Andrew did was he set up a tier system, because although people were developing filters, there was no standard. It was easy for people to say, oh, you know, these filters, they create no color cast and there's no loss of quality, but there was nothing to mark them by. So he developed this tier system and basically said, right, okay, filters that produce no color cast and no loss of detail, that was going to be tier 1, and it would work its way down. So at least there was something to be able to grade filters by. So the first filter system that Maven brought out were the square filters, which we've all used in the past, and basically a holder and you slide the filter in. When he started to look at developing a circular filter, he wanted to develop something that didn't have that problem of getting stuck on the lens, and also had a system that was really easy to identify which filters you were using, because the majority of filters that we use are black and they have a tiny little bit of writing on, which is incredibly difficult to read. So he wanted to develop something that was fast, quick to use and quick to put onto the camera. So I reached out to Maven Filters and said, look, I'm a photographer, YouTuber, how would you like to support my channel, and I'll use your filters and show them to my viewers. And what I really liked was they just said yes. They didn't stipulate anything about me using their filters in any way. They didn't say, yes, but we want you to mention this, or we want you to do this. They just said, yes, please do so. And I'd like to say that they're not sponsoring this episode in any way, shape or form. They sent me the filters to use, which was incredibly nice, but they haven't said that you've got to say this, you've got to do this, or produce this amount of information. And that really impressed me. So you can see how the filter system works. We've got the filter holder, just screws nicely onto the lens. There's plenty of grip there to put it on and take it off. And then we just drop the filter we need on there. As simple as that. And it does feel like it's a really good magnetic fit. It doesn't feel like that's coming off. Now, these are just a handful of the filters that Maven sent me. They really did send me a large box, a good selection. But you can see how they're actually color graded. This is the neutral density filters, and they're 3-stop, the red, purple is 6-stop, gold is the 10-stop. And if you look on their site, there's some really good explanations of how they came up with this system. They colored the circular polarizer blue because that makes you think of the water in the sky when you'll be using the polarizer. I don't know if that system's, how long that system's going to take to sink in with me. I don't have such a good memory, so it's going to take a little while. But you can also then see how they've color graded the combined polarizer with the ND filters. So we've got the blue, which shows that these filters are circular polarizers, but also the colors on the outside to show that they're neutral density. So it's a combined filter. Now I'm using these filter cases which they supplied with the filters, but you can actually just stack them. They produce a nice magnetic lens cap which fits nicely onto the ends of the filters, but you can actually use this to stack the filters like so, which means that it takes up a lot less space and is really nice and easy to get at your filters. There is a back plate as well. I mean, you can use two lens hoods or you can use their back plate, but you can see the difference in size if you just use them stacked like that. So for this shot, I'm going to be using their combined circular polarizer with ND filter 6-stop. Nice and simple. I know that 6-stop is the purple, and the blue background there shows me that it's the combined circular polarizer with ND filter, and it really is as easy as that. Snap it onto the end of the camera lens. And if you have a number of filter adapters, you can obviously set up each lens that you've got with the adapter on it to save time. So as I said, for this shot I'm using the circular polarizer combined with a 6-stop ND filter, and what I want to do is there's some tall grasses behind the trees there that are really moving around in the wind, so I want to capture a little bit of that movement, so I want a slightly longer exposure time, and the polarizer is really helping to knock back some of that reflection and also really darken the skies. Now I'm not sure, I think I might crop this image top and bottom. My plan is to produce a black and white of this shot. I think it will look really nice with those strong contrasts in the tree bark and also those light grasses behind. I think it will add some real contrast. Now that might look nice with the sky really sort of darkened down, but I haven't decided yet. I'll decide that back in post, but definitely a shot that's going to be black and white. So anyway, I'm just going to make a few adjustments. I want to try and get a sort of shutter speed of around about a second to capture the movement in those grasses, but I don't want movement in the trees as well. I think it's a really nice formation of the trees. So anyway, I'll take this shot and here's the image. One of the filters that Maven actually sent me was an infrared filter, and I wished I'd brought it with me because this is the perfect environment, shooting black and white with that strong light contrast with the blues and the yellows. It would have been really nice to see how that would have affected the image. So anyway, we'll feature that in another vlog, and we'll see how that works with maybe some black and white photography for the day. So I think that's it for this episode of the vlog. Time for a coffee and to enjoy this last evening bit of light. But it's been a great day out. What have I sort of surmised from, surmised the right word?
I think so.
Okay, what have I surmised from using the filters today? Well, the things that really impress me are the build quality is just excellent. They feel really good to hold. They feel good on the camera. I love the color coding system. The filters are so easy to find when you're diving around trying to get a filter on quickly. And a day like today with this sort of weather, it's when you need filters. The circular polarizer really helps knock back those reflections. I was able to get longer exposures using the neutral density filter, those two combined. So anyway, we'll put them to the test. I'm going to be using them for a long time, and perhaps in sort of a few months, I'll give you my sort of final verdict. But at the moment, I think they're a fantastic system to use, and what a great story and a great company to support. So If you're interested in the filters, go have a look at their website, find a link below in the description, and well, I think that's it. It's been really nice getting back out in the van,
Yep, it has.
and well, we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the vlog. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe.